Live look outside the White House in D.C., where you can see the American flag flying at half-staff in honor of former President Jimmy Carter, who died yesterday at 100 years old. Carter was the longest living U.S. president and spent roughly the last 2 years in hospice care. He served as the 39th president of the United States from 1977 to 1981, a term most remember for the Iran hostage crisis and an energy crisis as well. But Carter's legacy of humanitarian work will be remembered most of all.
What Jimmy Carter is an example of is just simple decency. Simple decency. And I think that's what the rest of the world looks to America for.
Of course, Carter's legacy of humanitarian work lives on all over the world, including right here in Charlotte. Our own Claire Kopsky is live this morning with more on the former president's work to help families. Claire?
Well, Alex, the stories of former President Carter's impact have been pouring in. Of course, many here in Charlotte remember the housing blitz just last year in West Charlotte, where 27 homes were built for families as a part of the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project. The Carter's humanitarian efforts project started back in 1984. It's dedicated to helping Habitat for Humanity build homes for families in need. The Charlotte build in 2023 was the first one that President Carter did not attend. According to Habitat for Humanity, the Carters had volunteered with the organization for more than 35 years. Their annual work project built more than 4,400 homes in 14 countries. It's an incredible impact that's only a piece of his legacy that local leaders have been speaking out about since yesterday. In a statement, Governor Roy Cooper called President Carter an icon and the epitome of what it means to be a true public servant in and out of the office. Senator Tom Tillis also saying President Carter will be remembered for his passion for helping those in need, his robust and unshakable faith, and his commitment to public service. We've now learned that his state funeral is set for January 9th, a date that President Biden has named as a national day of mourning. Live in Charlotte, I'm Claire Kopsky, WBTV, on your side.